Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm fascinated about high-tech agriculture and about food provision topics, and I'm even more happy to have conversations with the people who are leading such projects. So this time I talk with Christophe Lasseur. Excuse me for my French pronunciation. He works in European Space Agency as an environmental control and life support systems R&D coordinator, and also he's a head of Melissa project, which been running for the past 30 years. I'm extremely happy and I'm extremely impressed by the work that has been done, and I'm even more happy to share this with you. What about yourself as a person? So, what were you curious as a child?
I was not specifically curious about space, neither about microalgae. I grew up in a very small village in the middle of nowhere in the northwest part of France, yeah. And I was more interested by music or horses than anything related to space. High tech was really far away from my, let's say, family background. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I moved to electronics and engineering to study music, in fact. Yeah. And then in the process, I I had the opportunity to work in hospital to to understand better the link between life sciences and engineering. And this is where I carry on later on. I really carry on to develop this, how to be able to develop instrument to better understand and potentially control uh, life science organisms, yeah? Either as a humans, how can we detect disease or something like that? How can we use bacteria as a technology? How can we use plants? How all these behave together? Yeah. So it grew up in time.
Yeah. Oh, so it's an interesting plot twist. So from music to algae to engineering and then to algae. Wow. It's in some sort of it's relieving because sometimes as a young person you are questioning yourself, which direction am I, is this is the right thing that I'm doing, and in but maybe it's you're a great example that yeah, just move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also very impressed by the people who declare that when they were 10, they wanted to do this or that. It has never been the case for me. Uh, and in time, I develop interest for different domains. I think it's one of the, I always try to remain open, let's say. Yeah.
Mhm.
And now, of course, microalgae is part of the field I'm working on, but it's not the only domain, of course.
Yeah. And what about so how does it feel when you have to think about all these space topics, right? So it's relatively distant area and different environments. So how do you work with while knowing well with such level of uncertainty?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, if you deal with space development or technology for space, you basically you have nothing. So you have to reconsider absolutely everything. Yeah? What would be the mass of the system? Will it be its volume? How do you send it to space? When can you send it? Where it will be when it will be in space? Which energy do you use? From where the energy is coming from? Is it safe? Will it work a week or will it work 6 months? Does it has to be fully automated or do you have crew members? Yeah, absolutely everything has to be, let's say, considered previously. So that's something interesting because it's fully open. You cannot start and say, okay, this is exactly what I want. No? You normally write what we call requirements, yeah, what you want to achieve and so on. And then a lot of boxes will be ticked by TBD, which means to be defined. You don't know. Yeah? And then in the progress, you will be able to define it. Yeah? At the beginning, for example, you think that the temperature has to be somewhere around 20 degrees and maybe plus or minus 5. and maybe at the end is 20 degrees plus or minus 1. I don't know. Yeah, it's all these kind of things. Yeah, which has to be considered.
Mm-hmm. So in some sense, it's a very strict process. It feels like, you know, you have to tick the boxes in a very clear order.
Yeah. It's sometimes, first of all, due to this very open field in front of you, it takes time. Yeah? You don't fly something in 6 months, or it's very, very rare. Yeah? So you really have to be able to progress kind of a funnel development. And due to this, it takes a lot of time. And some people consider it, let's say, as administration, but it's not the case. It's just the fact that the process is slow. Yeah? It's slow by nature because you need to characterize. Yeah? And some people are sometimes disappointed due to this. Yeah? But on the other side, you really have the main advantage is it's really multidisciplinary. Yeah? You really have to tackle all the parameters at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, like in the movie The Martian, like the Matt Damon, he was so he's an astronaut, but he can't. Well, the real astronaut can't live only on potatoes, right, alone. So, because in the movie he was just growing up potatoes on Mars, right? So, in this case, that's why all these closed loop systems that replenish the spacecraft with essentials like air, food may be necessary, right, for these missions into deep space. So why
Yeah,
algae at
it's correct
first?
because
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So why algae at
why algae
first? You
at
know?
first?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. No, when you are in space and you are an astronaut, you need oxygen, you need water, and you need food. We can produce oxygen with chemical processes. We can produce water with chemical processes as well. But you cannot produce food without biology. Today, we are not able to synthesize all the molecules which are necessary for food. Yeah? So, considering that you need biology, you have, of course, higher plants, which is the most common food source, I would say, such as potatoes or spinach or soybean or whatsoever. But this has some drawback. It needs a lot of surface. Yeah? And plants, the edible part of plant is limited. And let's say it's for a space mission is very challenging. Yeah? So if you consider microalgae, and not only microalgae, but microalgae, you have the advantage to be able to perform more or less, the same functions, but with less mass, less volume, less energy. So in terms of engineering, we prefer microalgae. Of course, we will never feed the crew only with microalgae. This is clear. It's going to be a mix. But microalgae has a big advantage. Let's say, we can do the same with better, what we call the Alice criteria. It means better, let's say, reduce mass, reduce energy, reduce volume, and so on.
I've read somewhere that if all goes well, astronauts on the future missions in the deep space will get more than a viable source of so the microalgae should consist of 30% of the astronaut's diet. What do you think about this number? Is it
I have I have no clue from where this value is coming from. I don't think anybody today is able to tell you if it will be 20 or 50 or 5. We are all working on this. We are in the process of characterization microalgae. What will be the biomass quality? What will be the minimum of energy to be able to do the conversion CO2 to oxygen? What could be the contaminants? Because, of course, it shall not be contaminated. What will be the production of protein? What will be the production of sugars? and so on. And depending on all this, then we will decide what will be the percentage. But it has as well to be accepted by the crew. Microalgae normally have a very strong pigmentation, which means that the food is becoming very dark. And we know that psychologically, it's as well a bit difficult. So there is a large number of parameters to consider. We are progressing. We are working on it for the last 30 years. We flew microalgae on board the space station, but still today, we are not able to tell you if it could be 5% or 50%, or any value in between of the crew diet.
So why is it so? So it's what is still missing then? Which sticks are not clear yet, like the essential ones.
Well, it's missing a lot of information for the complete mission. We don't know what will be the launcher. Yeah. So to simplify, we don't know how much mass we can launch. Yeah. Maybe we can launch 100 tons, and in that case, we could, let's say, cultivate plants because we will have less mass issues. Maybe we can only, let's say, launch, I don't know, 40 tons, and in that case, everything will be extremely constrained. Maybe we will have a lot of energy. Maybe we will have a very limited energy. Maybe it will be a crew of 4. Maybe it will be a crew of 6. Maybe the mission will be for 2 years. Maybe the mission will be for 3 years. Maybe they will go on surface and stay there. Maybe they will never go on surface. All this is open today. Yeah. So to tell you that the design is going to be like this today, if somebody tell you it's going to be like this, just smile. It's not possible.
Oh, wow. So basically, so this okay. So trying to grow microalgae for some sort of use in space, right? But without just, it's some sort of creating the foundation, right? The knowledge, how the microalgae works in space, what kind of products you can expect to produce, the amounts, right? And just to create this the foundation, right?
I think
understand.
I really like your sentence is to create the knowledge.
Yeah.
And it is exactly this. We need to have an intensive characterization and know-how about all potential technology we can use. Yeah? So we need to know a lot about catalyzer. We need to know a lot about membrane. We need to know a lot about tomatoes. We need to know a lot about Limnospira platensis. Yeah, and all this. Yeah. And then when we have accumulated this know at a very high level of detail, then we will be able to assemble the system. We are often speaking about system, not one technology independently, because in space, everything is linked. Yeah? So you do need to understand the interface. For example, if you want to grow microalgae, you will have to feed the microalgae. Yeah? So you will have to feed it with CO2, which is coming from the astronaut, this is clear. But this is not enough. Yeah? You need nitrogen, you need all the other elements. Yeah? And from where are these coming from? Yeah? Is it coming from urine? Is it coming from things we transport from Earth? If it is coming from urine, what about the salinity issue? What about the organic compounds? And all these kind of things. Yeah? It's the same on the other side. Which kind of recipe do we produce? Do we have to produce a recipe who contain a bit more vitamins because the astronaut need to a higher concentration of vitamin at that time, or another vitamin or another minerals? You see, all this has to be understood. But if you want to be able to do this trade-off, you need to accumulate a huge quantity of know-how, and then you will be able to select. And that's why it takes time. Because you will have to collect all this information to be able to make a proper choice.
Yeah. So nowadays in space, what they are using photobioreactors to grow microalgae in space, or how the research is being done?
Yeah, yes, correct. Mainly Europe is doing this. We did that, when was it now? 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we flew 4 photobioreactors to be able to characterize the growth of microalgae in a space environment in zero gravity, to look at the radiation effect, and to look as well to something which is sometimes difficult to understand on Earth, is what we call the multiphasic problem. You know, on Earth, if you take any object and it will drop, in
Yeah.
space it will fly. Yeah? So, for example, gas bubbles in a bottle, they stay where they are. They will not
Yeah. Yeah.
go
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
top. So this creates a lot of other challenges, which are coming at the top of the other challenges. Yeah. So it was important to show that we could do that. Or do you supply CO2 in the microalgae, or do you recover oxygen? Is the growth kinetics the same than on Earth? Because of course, if it is faster or slower, it's very important in your design, because it's going to be the yield, and the yield is a mass, and that's exactly what we want to know. So this is what we did. It's an experiment was called Artemis. Yeah? It was a batch culture, and now we're going to do it again in continuous mode.
Mm.
And in parallel, because this was small bioreactors, and now we are developing much bigger one in order to progress in engineering, which with more sensors, more control, better environment control, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So can you share some of the findings that what you have
Yeah,
found out of?
well, if you have time, I would advise you to go on the Melissa Foundation webpage. Yeah, because there is a lot of information. Yeah? If you go in the bibliographic chapter, all these results are presented and so on. What we demonstrate during this Artemis flight is there is no difference of kinetics.
Mm-hmm.
So microalgae grow exactly the same rate on Earth or in space. Yeah? That's a very important thing. We demonstrate that we can cultivate microalgae in arsenic condition. What does it mean? It means that they are not contaminated by other microorganisms who could be pathogen for the crew. So that's very important as well, because, you know, when you put water, microorganisms, and a lot of food inside, all the other microorganisms around would like to share this menu. Yeah? So, of course, you have to be sure that you are not contaminated. And of course, we demonstrate that we can separate oxygen from the liquid phase. So all this has been done.
Mm-hmm. And the separation. Yeah. But is there some sort of difference between growing in space and, for example, on Mars? Is it the systems are anyhow different?
Yes, the gravity will be different. The
The
gravity will be
micro.
different because
Yeah.
when you are in the transit phase, let's say to simplify, between Earth and Mars, you will be in 0 G, no gravity at all. But as soon as you will, let's say, be closer to Mars and on Mars, then you will have a gravity. The gravity will be lower than on Earth, but already it will be bigger than on the Moon. Yeah. So you see, you need to know this, because again, when you will have to transfer gas to liquid, separate and everything, this will be part of the deal. But today, I'm not able to tell you if the first mission or even the second or the third mission to Mars will be on surface, or if they will remain in orbit and go down for only a few days and come back. This is not clear today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So of course, so analyzing in space, because then you can kind of you're learning how you can produce food and to supply the astronauts with food while on the flight, right? And if looking on Mars, then it's just purely settling, conquering the Mars, right? So then thinking how to inhabit that area. Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. And what about regular plants, right? So is it? What about the is it also the kinetics of growth? Is also this kind of the same, or is it different in space and on the space systems?
Today, we don't really know. This will have to be investigated as well, because the plant, you cannot characterize a plant in a few weeks. Normally, you need sometimes months. Yeah? And if you cultivate microalgae in a very limited volume, you will have millions of them. So you can do statistical calculation. With plants, you will need a minimum of 6 here to be able to do some statistics. And that's already a volume. Yeah. So that's a difficulty as well, to be able to do proper calculation. You need numbers. Yeah. And this is important to do. That's why today the morphological development of plant in microgravity is not well understood. We are working on it. We are progressing every day, but it's still in the research phase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and coming back to the algae, so of course it's oxygen, food, but of course when you cut down the algae a little bit in a smaller pieces, right? So there are a bit more elements in it, right? Some, as you were referring, vitamins, some more nutraceuticals. Yeah. So,
I simplify my thought by explaining oxygen, CO2, sugar, and protein. But of course, it's to simplify. It's almost the Mendeleev table if I overdo it. Yeah.
So one of the kind of issues with the astronauts is something with eye development, as far as I know. So like algae has these EPAs, DHAs, fatty acids that kind of, at least here on Earth, they're supplying, right? They're selling these EPA, DHAs, and it's good for brain function and development, but also for eye development and function. Is it also these kind of aspects are being researched?
Well, today, to my knowledge, but I can be wrong, I don't know everything, but to my knowledge, it has not been studied so far. One of the difficulty to study all this, let's say, biostimulant or bioeffect, or call it as ever you want, is again the statistic number. Because to be able to do that, you will need to test it on 6 astronauts as a minimum. You need to have the 6 astronauts almost, let's say, in the same condition, in the same age, more or less with the same food quality, doing the same physical exercise during a long period. And this is rare. This is rare. This is why today, even some pharmaceutical product, their effect in microgravity is not so well known. So we are using more or less the same than on Earth, and we assume that the effect will be potentially the same, but it's not so known. So going to new, let's say, bioproduct or even new pharmaceutical product is a challenge, because on Earth, and we heard about it every day, you need to test it on 1,000 people to be able to say, okay, this product is good or this product is bad. And in microgravity, of course, during the space mission, you never have 1,000 volunteers.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So it feels like every single movement, every single decision has to be reconsidered and thought out to the very, it's some sort of primal thinking, right? So it has to be, it feels like the decision that you make today, it might affect in the very long term and put the direction for future researches, or how not to limit the research.
It's correct
for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's correct. It is why the know-how has to be properly organized. Yeah, because you need to remember why 20 years ago we didn't do that. Yeah. So you really need to be able to accumulate and organize this know-how, which call it knowledge management, properly. And it's not only database, because if you have only database with document and file, you don't trace back the thinking. So it's more than this. It's really organizing the pathway of your thinking when you went this direction or this direction. And it's still, let's say, it is in elaboration. Yeah? But it's important to keep all this information.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So is it now? How is it this knowledge managed by the research articles, and they have to be written in a specific way, or?
It's not enough. Yeah. Research article is very good. Mathematical models are very good as well, but it's not enough because from you have other parameters. Of course, you have engineering, you have science, but then you have budget, and then you have political decision, and then you have management decision, and then you have risk decision. Yeah, you need to have all this information because from time to time, for example, we stop something. Why? Because the company who was doing this has bankrupt, yeah? Or there is not this support or this material is not available anymore because the company doesn't supply it anymore, or because let's say one of the European countries who contribute to this activity is not interested anymore, yeah, and all this has to be, or because we discover that there is a new virus who can be very dangerous for the crew if we do this activity. So we discover, knowledge is not always going forward. Sometimes it's going backward. Yeah? You realize that there is a risk that you never thought before. Then you have to step back and restart. Yeah? And all this has to be known. So of course, scientific publication is very good. It's very good because you are evaluated by external. So in this sense, it's very good because they criticize your work and you progress. So that's mandatory, but it's not enough. You need much more.
Mhm. And so, how does this virus lately affected your work or some of the ongoing research processes? um,
Yeah, you are speaking about the coronavirus now. Huh?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, it doesn't simplify because I mean, a lot of university has closed. Yeah, because as you know, there is confinement in Europe, but they are not the same. The French one is not the same than the Dutch one. Is not the same than the British one. Is not the same than the Italian, and so on. So the period are not always the same. At the beginning, people thought, okay, we're gonna pass without confinement. Some countries say, okay, we do a very intensive one, and then we can relax. And then people thought we will have a second wave, no second wave. And this is where we are now. So it has to be, let's say, a lot of remote work. I mean, quite a large number of people in Melissa are teleworking. It works, I would say, on the routine work. Yeah. Things which we know how to do. I think this is probably not too affected. Yeah? And you can even put at the top of it the fact that it reduces the travel costs, the environmental impact, and so on, which is probably very good. Now, when you have decision to take, you are losing a bit of discussion, a bit of brainstorming, a bit of energy. Everybody is at home, mainly working on his own. Of course, from time to time, he give a call, send an email, and so on. But the challenges that you normally have in the team are not there anymore, or let's say considerably reduced. And that's this brainstorming, this challenge, this discussion are, of course, a source of progress. Yeah? And this has a bit disappeared. So, okay, if it stays like that, only between brackets for a year, I think we will, of course, pass through, but it shall not stay like this for quite a large number of years.
Okay. And so, yes, you are working on this Melissa project, right? So maybe very briefly, could you explain about it?
Well, it's back to what we discussed for the last 30 minutes, more or less. Eh?
Yeah.
If you want to go to space for an astronaut, you need oxygen, water, and food. Yeah? Today, the astronauts are very close to the Earth. They are somewhere around 500 kilometers. It's nothing, let's say Amsterdam to Paris, to simplify. Yeah. So we have cargo, which are transporting oxygen, water, and food to the crew members regularly. But if you go to Mars, you will quit the Earth orbit. Yeah? So you are not able to do this resupply. It doesn't work anymore. It's just impossible. So you need to put everything in the rocket before the launch. But if you put everything today, as a minimum, it will be 5 kilos per person and per day. Yeah? It's too much. It's already too much for the capacities of our launchers. Yeah? So what is the challenges you have in front of you? Either you do bigger rockets, yeah, it's a choice. Either you try to recycle everything on board. Yeah. The Europeans have decided that the recycling approach is more elegant, more in line with the European values, and bringing as well larger know-how than only between brackets, only bigger launchers. And that's Melissa. Melissa's objective is this. You take waste and you try to transform them in oxygen, water, and food, and this continuously all over the mission. And this is why you are considering water recycling, oxygen production, CO2 removal, urine treatment, microbial pathogen, food production, food preparation, and so on.
Is it more challenging path, do you think, this recycling way, or it's just more long term? Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly more challenging than to transport everything, no doubt. We realize that to really understand the challenge of a circular system, you more or less need 2 years. You know, every time we have somebody arriving in the team, at the beginning, yeah, when he start to elaborate and think, he always has a tendency to drop the problem to the next step, yeah, without realizing that this next step is his first step, yeah. So all this thinking makes time, yeah. You need to understand all this, and it is certainly more challenging. But again, by having all these people, Melissa is around 100 people, thinking together, medical doctor, chemist, microbiologist, plant physiologist, engineer, whatsoever, all together, it's a very interesting brainstorming. And this leads to a large number of progress, patent, publication, spin-off company, PhD, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so you're saying that the people who are working, of course, a lot of interdisciplinarity, but basically it's mostly natural sciences, life sciences specialists, right? Who are working on these kind of cases.
No. You really have you have chemists, you have mathematicians, you have thermal engineer, you have structural engineers. So no, it's not only life science people. It's a much larger community.
Mm-hmm. And when looking at the bigger picture, right? So overall, what is the reason behind why do we need to go outside of the Earth, right? Why do we want to go for the space exploration? Why do we want to go on Mars, from your opinion?
Why did you want to go on the North Pole? Why do you want to go on the under the ocean? Why do you want to study geology? Yeah. Why do you want to understand how your body works? Yeah. It's the same. It's because human needs to explore, need to understand, needs to accumulate know-how to be able to progress. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. There's no other reason. It's human by nature, I would say. Yeah. So if you do that, then you need to deploy all this research to be able to do it. Yeah? Why do we need planes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we have boats and horses, we can do it.
Yeah.
Right? And a bike, you don't need car. You have a good bike.
True.
Takes a bit more time, okay. go to Vladivostok, but still, you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things that may not seem obvious at the moment, yeah, it will be obvious in 5, 10, 100 years, right?
So during centuries, humans were living without planes, yeah, and it went rather well. Yeah?
So when do
So
you
it's a bit
think
the same.
we will be traveling in space a little bit rather, well, maybe not, yeah, maybe commercially. Of course, there's Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos who are building Virgin, who are building all these commercial ideas, but when do you think we will start building something a little bit more appropriate,
You mean
livable on
commercial
Mars?
for everybody and not commercial? Yeah. I don't know. I don't see it before 20 to 20, even approximately 50 years. Yeah. But it will come progressively, yeah, if you see commercialization and so on. But a lot of excitement, yeah, but not so many cases if you look at it. Yeah, the commercial flight today are still for astronauts of the NASA, of the European Space Agency, of JAXA, but not for you, not for the people of the street. Yeah, you cannot go to the station and say, okay, I would like a ticket to go 5 days in space. It's not possible. Yeah? So between today and this time, I think a few more years. Yeah.
Few more years, and then you can buy a ticket for a ridiculous price, probably.
You know, I say a few more years, I mean 20, 50
Okay, okay,
more years.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, in that sense.
Not 6 months, not 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like, in the media it's always, the United States with all the space companies or space exploration, right? And somehow, yeah. So where, like, if we would take some sort of scale, right? So, well, in some sense, I would say the USA is mostly visible with it, and then where is Europe, and what about the other countries, continents, or with the
Yeah, I mean, it's
activities?
you
Yeah.
cannot reduce it to the space choice. Yeah, uh, the way European is structured, the way of the European values are, let's say, a bit different of what you may have in the US. Yeah, so European will be more on education, social protection, and environment protection, and so on. US will take more risk to simplify. Yeah? So this is as well the way the space strategy reflect. Yeah? You will see that in Europe, human exploration is not the top priority. Top priority for space is more Earth observation, telecommunication, let's say space for the European citizen. Yeah? In NASA, it's really exploration, or to, let's say, go to new territories, not always to the west, but as well to space. It's a different approach, it's a different mentality, it's a different history. Both has to be accepted and acknowledged, yeah? But they are different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about other continents? How is it? How is it with yeah, India, China, Russians?
Well, it's clear that today the other continents which are booming are, let's say, mainly China. Japan is as well quite involved with us on board the space station. But yes, the booming country is China. Let's see how they progress. What we saw over the last year, they are doing quite good, quite well. But to my knowledge, it is still a military program, yeah? So a bit different of what we do in Europe. And most probably they will take more risk as well than that we do, yeah, in Europe. But yeah, they are a clear partner of space exploration for the future. And I don't think that the situation we have today, which is China on one side, Europe, US, and Japan on the other side, and Russia, of course, will be maintained. I think we will have to collaborate a bit more intensively. But okay, things has to evolve. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's inspiring. That the collaboration. It would be pleasurable to see the collaboration of all the countries for. I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, be back to the early days of the space station. I mean, nobody thought that Russia and America will be able to collaborate for the International Space Station, and it works. Yeah, it works even very well. So why not with China in the future?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So
space exploration is very expensive. So I don't know if competition is always good. It's always good in terms of challenges, but in terms of budget, it has to be discussed.
mhm. So lately, I've seen one of the memes, and lately Elon Musk became a world richest person in the world. So people are congratulating Elon Musk for becoming the richest person in the world, and the joke behind is that Elon Musk, who's saving money so that he could buy Earth and sell it to the aliens in exchange of Mars. It's some sort of joke. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, coming to the topic of aliens a little bit, so do you think aliens have already been on our planet? Do you think they're keeping an eye on us, on our uh,
I
existence?
don't know if I am the right person to discuss about it. I have major doubt about the existence of aliens. Let's do it on the most soft way. Yeah, I have no clue. I don't think they exist personally, but yeah, you can. I think imagination and dreams are always good. They shall not lead to fears, but otherwise, it's always interesting. I mean, again, from where are we coming from? Where are we going? Are we influenced by other population? I would not say worldwide, but space-wide. Yeah, and then it's something we need to know. Yeah? So we need to explore.
So, what do you think? How the society would react if the government officially would announce that the aliens exist and that they're trying to keep some sort of conversation with them? What do you think? How the regular people would just react to that?
I think we are living in a world of fears these days, and scientific declaration on sometimes very stupid fake news. Yeah? And this, if this happened, let's project ourselves in something that which is more imagination these days. I think the fears and the science and the reality will have to be extremely well explained. And today also we benefit of a lot of information. It's not properly managed, and people are, let's say, from time to time thinking very strange ways, arguing that the earth is not round but flat, and so on, that human we are living at the same time than dinosaurs, and all these kind of stupidities. Yeah. So we will have to be very strict on education, how to explain, keep a good education about risk, but not create fears for the benefit of a few leaders who want to, let's say, have their own or personal benefit. Yeah? And all this is a bit of a challenge, I would say. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and what about the space startups or some sort of companies that you mentioned that you are working with? But yeah, from the plant sciences perspective, right? Or from in Europe, can you name some of those?
Easily. I mean, I will just mention the one coming from Melissa. You
Yeah.
have Semilla, which is mainly working on water and waste treatment. You have Hydrome, which is working on urine recycling. You have EasyCol, who produce anti-cholesterol agent.
Mm.
You have IPStar. I mean, there is quite a large number of companies. You had EPAS a few years ago. You have Firmus, which is now using it for grey water recycling. So all these are companies which are spin-off, or let's say company who was built on space know-how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And maybe another question would be related with the European Space Agencies. Just yeah, but what do you think? What would be the profile or how, like the career at the ESA? Right? How does it look like, and how what kind of qualities the person should have when if he's thinking about it?
Well, I work for the technical directorate, not from human resources, so it's a bit difficult for me to give you a
Yeah.
proper answer. Yeah? You should interview the people from HR. I would think personal feeling, and it will have to be blessed by my management. I would say that people has to be open-minded. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's very important to be open-minded, to really every day try to learn something. Yeah, I think a good day in ESA is one you learn something, and every day you should have learned something. Yeah, whatsoever is the domain, because you need as well to improve your know-how to be able to do the proper choice. And that's, let's say, yeah, requirement number one.
So I think it was a wonderful conversation with you. I learned already quite a lot, and yeah, it felt already like a trip to outer space in some sense, because yes, I was forced to think a little bit beyond, the casual thought pattern. So I enjoyed it quite a lot, and yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts and experience with me today.
Okay, thank you very much for the discussion, and good luck in your progress and in your know-how accumulation.